When it comes to these kind of ranking lists, there is always inherent bias from the maker of the list. My bias in terms of open world PvP is I really like the Dark Age of Camelot style realm versus realm PvP, and have always found it to be the best open world PvP we have seen in an MMO, even to this day. So games that have that style of PvP will rank higher on my list naturally. I also prefer high fantasy MMOs with a lot of variety in class kits, so that knocks a few MMOs down on this list as well. I also think we really haven't seen a modern MMO do open world PvP right, and us open world PvP fans are desperate for a good modern iteration of open world PvP. With that said, let's get into the list. I first want to mention a few MMOs that are honorable mentions for me before we get into the top 10. Runescape is worth mentioning as it does have some open world PvP in the wilderness areas of the game. It's not my style of MMO at all, but I can't deny its popularity, so I am mentioning it here. Then we have another old school MMO, Ultima Online. The current version has various open world PvP options with different rule sets on the PvP servers. Finally, Archeage, surprisingly for some, does not make my top 10. At one time, this game might have actually been number 1 on my list. Early on, this game was so well done, but massive mistakes by the developers in terms of monetization and the in-game loop have left it as an absolute shell of what it once was. With that out of the way, let's start with the top 10 list. The 10th MMO on the list, Project Ascension, is the only one that is only available on a private server. This is a private WoW server with many unique mechanics that make it radically different. They have multiple different servers with different rule sets, and they have seasonal servers. The basic premise of Ascension is a classless version of WoW where you can choose from all the skills to form your own class. Different servers have different ways of acquiring these skills, and there is also an incredible enchantment system that provides even more skills and heavy augments to the existing skills and forms the basis for a lot of builds. I could talk for a long time about all the features of Ascension, but this video is about open world PvP. They have a mode called High Risk PvP, which is an opt-in mode. In this mode, you'll only see other players with this mode turned on, similar to the War mode in Retail WoW. If you kill an enemy player, they will drop any gear that they have not felt commutated, which essentially causes them to drop gold based on the item level instead of the item. You also drop anything in your bag. With this added risk comes increased rewards, as mobs can now drop Bloodforge gear, which is the PvP version of raid gear in Ascension. It is a really fun mode for those that are into open world PvP. Overall, I feel Ascension has a ton of interesting ideas that I think other MMOs should look at. The 9th MMO on my list is Mortal Online 2. You might be wondering why I have it so low, and the main reason is the full loot nature and the many glaring issues with the game. Full loot with no restrictions is just too punishing. Despite that, the game does have some interesting mechanics, such as a really in-depth crafting system and some great sandbox features. But it is hard to look past the issues with this one. The 8th best open world PvP MMO is Gloria Victis. Gloria Victis is an MMORPG with an emphasis on realism set in a low fantasy medieval open world. It features skill-based, non-tab target combat, open PvP with territory control, a deep crafting system, and a player-driven economy. The looting is not nearly as punishing as it is in other open world PvP MMOs. You can lose some gear, but never more than 1 or 2 items at a time, and those times are rare. This alone moves this game up a notch ahead of Mortal Online, but I move it down because of the low fantasy setting and the combat that is not my style personally. But I still feel for those that like that setting and the combat, this is a great MMO for PvP fans. The next MMO is Black Desert Online. This MMO still has a very healthy player base, and to this day still has some of the best aesthetics of any MMO. The combat is ranked by many as the best in an MMO. I would rank it as a close second to Guild Wars 2 combat, but it is a fantastic combat system. For open world PvP, BDO offers a flagging and karma system for players over level 50. Before level 50, you cannot flag for PvP. There are also Guild Wars and Sieges available. My biggest issue with BDO outside of the monetization is that the in-game loop is very much a solo grinding experience, so open world PvP is often 1v1s and often comes down to who gets the jump on the other person. And latency has a huge effect with the combat of this game as well. The next MMO is Guild Wars 2. The only open world PvP is the Tri-Realm PvP, which they call World vs. World. This is a weekly matchup where they pit equal servers against each other to compete for points by holding keeps, towers, and camps. There are keep upgrades and supplies that must be acquired to build siege weapons. To me, it always has felt a bit shallow compared to other realm versus realm PvP games, as the maps are very small and the objectives are very easy to capture. Also, an AoE cap of 5 means you see a lot of Zerg groups where it is just a huge ball of players in one spot to make AoE less effective. It was fun for a while after launch with all the tryhard guilds involved, but is far from the best implementation of realm versus realm PvP, in my opinion. The next MMO is in many ways similar to Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online. Cyrodiil is a better implementation of Guild Wars 2's World vs. World. Admittedly, I haven't played much ESO, but I still find the open world PvP to be a step above Guild Wars 2, but still not near the top of my list. Next I have Albion Online. I have this MMO in 4th place for open world PvP, not because it is an MMO that is really one I personally enjoy, but because of its popularity. It has full loot open PvP areas, and PvP areas where you don't drop loot, and safe areas. Replacing gear is fairly easy, so losing your gear is not the worst thing in this MMO. It also has castle sieges and guild wars. For me, I'm not a huge fan of top-down and the mobile-friendly and very limited combat system. But if you're a fan of open-world PvP, I can't deny how popular it is, and it is worth giving it a chance if you do like top-down MMOs. In 3rd place, I have EVE Online. Some people would have this MMO in 1st place, but as I noted in the beginning, I prefer third-person fantasy MMOs with decent combat systems. But if you are really into economy and a brutal PvP system, EVE is still one of the best ever in both categories. It has some of the best player stories of any MMO, and it still remains very popular to this day. The next MMO is one of my favorite of all time. It has the Dark Age of Camelot style realm versus realm open world PvP. It is not tri-realm like Dark Age, which is one of the reasons I don't think it was quite as good. But to this day, this MMO has some of the best open world PvP, and it is still playable despite the official servers being shut down because of the Return of Reckoning server. In fact, the Return of Reckoning server is actually an improved version of the official servers as they have added more content. It had great class design for its time, and was one of the few MMOs that had good PvP tanks. The number one open world PvP MMO is Dark Age of Camelot. This to this day remains the best ever implementation of open world PvP, even though it was released in 2001. For many modern gamers, the old school mechanics are likely to be a turnoff, and I get that, but I still don't think the modern iterations of the realm versus realm PvP have been done better than the original implementation in this game. I of course was one of many that pledged to and had a lot of hope for Camelot Unchained, but unfortunately we will most likely never see that MMO released. It is a shame because they had a lot of great ideas for that game, just as they did for Dark Age and for Warhammer Online back in the day. Mark Jacobs gets a bad rap for the failures of Camelot Unchained, which I understand, but it's hard to deny the impact he has had in the MMO PvP space historically. I am excited for the future of open world PvP with what I think can be the best implementation we have seen with Ashes of Creation. I think for the most part, on paper at least, they may have righted the wrongs that Archeage had, and that has potential to push Ashes to number 1 on this list someday. Time will tell, but I am optimistic. That is all I have for this one. If you liked the video, consider subscribing. If you still need to sign up for an Ashes of Creation account, my referral link is in the description. With that, I will see you in the next video.